Suman, Kalia, and I'm an assistant professor at St. Peter's University here in Jersey City, right next to New York City. I'm part of the Department of Computer Science and Information Sciences at St. Peter's. So for the past few months, I've been going into different conferences, and we are looking at generative AI and AI in general, and people don't necessarily recognize a whole lot of difference between the two. But I just realized that the generative AI, as much as useful it is, it could be problematic if you're not a very discriminatory user about it. So the topic of the discussion, by the way, can you see my slides? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. So the
presentation.
Okay. The topic is potential impact of generative and artificial intelligence on financial industry. Prior to becoming a professor, I was an executive with the international large bank, and so I had a very good understanding of the financial benefits we could get out of the AI. But there are potential downbits to it also, so hence the paper in there. To prepare for the paper, what I did was that I studied some books on neural networks to prepare myself for how the neural networks work, how the training data sets are put together in there, and how they are over a period of continuous reiterations in there, they could be made better. To do that even better, what I did was that I studied a couple books, particularly 1,000 Brains by Jeff Hopkins, a New York Times bestseller. I wanted to understand what his thought process is on the 1,000 Brains. How does he feel the neural networks work as a multiple mini brain system in there? And then also I followed a book by Kevin P. Murphy on machine learning, a probabilistic perspective. Both these books exhibit a parallel practicing characteristics. Now, we have been reading every day about the generative AI, that how it is actually taking over in universities is becoming a major issue of discussion if they should be adopted or not. So I wanted to have a very clear understanding. So once I did that, then I started having chats with the ChatGPT, OpenAI, and start asking questions in there and trying to see the viability of having a solid knowledge in the background industry. I was asking questions. How does it pick up the training data sets? What are the different data sets? So you're going to see some of the training data sets where the bank uses and why they use it. And I will also show where the good lies and where the downfalls and lie in this whole process. And so I just want to build up a knowledge base a little bit about people who may not be very comfortable with the generative. I just want to talk about that you could have a generative AI or a discriminant AI. Generative AI basically creates a realistic outputs, images, text, audio. For example, if you have a data set of images, horses, we may wish to build a new horse altogether, which does not exist. So once we build a data set with the horses or existing horses, and then we expect it to create a new horse, which having the basic characters of a horse, what's different than other horses in there, that would be a generative AI. Discriminative AI, on the other hand, evaluates and distinguishes between the generated outputs and the real data. So discriminative is relatively, we could easily relate to that, people in the business world in their general. So further, I want to talk a little bit is that once we collect that data, the neural networks works on that data, that how that data is built on their layers, and these layers are interacting with each other. Each layer contains units that are connected to the previous layer through a set of weights. By stacking layers, the unit in each subsequent layer can represent increasingly sophisticated aspects of the original input. So having a little bit now built a background on the AI, the predictive AI and the generative AI, I thought that I should start looking into, now the real issue is that now that we have ChatGPT, OpenAI, or other generative AI technologies, how would they now work with the banking industry, or what would the impact will be? That is the heart of the whole problem here. So I started looking into through the ChatGPT, different questions of the financial industry, fintech industries, cyber issues, how the data is presented, how is it collected, and what its thought processes are. We noticed that the training data sets currently being used in the banking industry they were clearly enumerated, and I'll talk about that one. But before I go forward, I just want to talk about and may briefly discuss training data sets. The training data set basically is a collection of data which is used to train the generative model. As I said earlier about the horse example, that what we do is that we actually compile all the data, the historical data in there, and through the reiterations of the data, we train the neural network or the generative model to provide all the knowledge and debates of the different aspects of the that training data. One of the finest example of generative model in the natural world is the human being. You can close your eyes and imagine what an elephant would look like from any possible angle. You can plan your week ahead by working through various futures in your mind's eyes and taking action according without even leaving your apartment. So human mind is very creative. It's a perfect example of generative AI. However, to provide a similar capability to a computer, we do have to build a training data. And that's what the whole process is, that as it appears to our mind very simple to come up with a creative process, it actually has to be built into the data model, into the generative data model. So when we need to train a generative model which can output sets of pixels that have a high chance of belonging to the original training data set. Generative models are often more difficult to evaluate, especially when the quality of the output is large. Now, when I started looking into the training data sets being used in the bank, I found out that they use financial time series data, which is actually financial market predictions, risk analysis, historical financial time series data. This could include stock prices, market indices, exchange rates, interest rates, or other relevant financial metrics collected. They use one of that data set. Also, the transactional data is basically, it's a large collection of transaction data that typically includes details such as transaction amounts, timestamps, transaction types, customer IDs, and other relevant features. Then they could use regulatory data reports, which is basically compliance-related generative model. It uses regular documents, financial reports, compliance guidelines. And then I used the news and market sentiments. Basically, it's the articles, press releases, social media data, market sentiment indicators as part of the training data. And then the last I saw that the ChatGPT told me the data set being used is the customer data, which is basically the customer behavior analysis, customer segmentation, personalized financial recommendations,
So customer profiles, demographic data, transaction histories, and other customer-related information. So once I had that set in mind, now the next stage was to now start looking into that what exactly that it captures that data, how we're going to move forward. Then I started seeing that when we started asking these different questions in there, then I looked into it, what will be the impact now that they have this data set, what will be the impact of it on risk assessment and fraud detection system? The ChatGPT, I could analyze large volume of financial data to identify patterns, anomalies. They could help in improve risk assessment, fraud detection. So that was one of the areas I thought there will be an impact on it. The second I saw was the trading and investment strategies. It can help on developing trading algorithms and investment strategies. They can analyze, again, historical market data, generate realistic simulations, identify patterns which human mind might miss because of the large volume of the data. The third aspect I looked into was the credit assessment and underwriting. Again, by analyzing a vast amount of data, the model can look into credit histories, income, and other relevant factors. And these models can generate more accurate credit risk profile and streamline the loan approval process, which the human process will be a lot slower. The next thing I saw and looked into was the portfolio management and asset allocation. By optimizing asset allocation and risk management by analyzing historical market data and the economic indicators, these models can generate simulations and recommendations of portfolio rebalancing. Again, one of the good things. Then I started looking into the investment portfolio management and asset allocation, as I said earlier. Further, I looked into the investment portfolio, the improved risk assessment. I thought that these models can, as they can analyze historical data, identify patterns, correlations, anomalies, and potential risks, they are better suited to do a better risk assessment. And next thing I looked at was the stress testing and scenario analysis. These simulations can do a wide range of scenarios to stress test a portfolio, financial systems, specific risk factors. Then I looked into real-time risk monitoring. AI can monitor real-time data streams and identify potential risks or anomalies in real life. Then again, one of the hot topics is money laundering. I looked into that. It can monitor real-time data streams, identify potential risk or anomalies, just like in the real time, it could go in and look at detecting potential instances of money laundering or other illicit activities. Also, I checked into the privacy preserving analytics. These techniques like federated learning and secure multi-party computation enable collaborative data analysis while maintaining data privacy. So you could, if the model is appropriately built, data privacy is not as exposed as it could be. Now, how best to use it, having looked into all these aspects of it? They are good things. They are positive aspects of it. Where are potentially, how can we be careful about it? And I thought that by identifying a problem, by clearly be clear about what our objectives are, what exactly is the problem. We clearly define the problem or objective we want to address using a generative AI, whether it is generating synthetic data or creating realistic simulations or enhancing a decision making or improving the user experience. It can be a well-defined guide. Then I looked into the second part is data preparation. You need to gather and prepare high quality data relevant to your problem. Generative models rely on a large and diverse data sets to learn patterns and generate meaningful outputs. As we talked about the training data sets, the better your data is, as bias-free it is, better model it will prepare. Again, we talked about the model training, that AI model using a prepared data, which is more trustworthy, more data you have captured in there, your model will be a lot more dependent and be stating the facts. Valuation and validation. We need to assess the performance and quality of the generated outputs. We can't just take the outcoming out of the ChatGPT or the generative AI and see it as a gospel. We need to evaluate and validate it, having a metrics specific to the problem we are working with, such as accuracy, diversity, realism, satisfaction. Validation helps to ensure the strength of the generative model. Now we're gonna further talk about the impact of the. We talked about what it can do. Now we're going to actually see the potential impact of the generative AI on the financial industry. Again, investment portfolio management allocation, we did talk about earlier on that one in there. We could streamline it better with all that data. The question is that how good is our training data set? If we are picking up the data from the internet, which may not be fully trustworthy, we may have an issue with the allocations. So if our data is fully validated, trustworthy, we have collected the information ourselves in there, then it will definitely provide us a better information in managing the portfolio and doing the asset allocation. The next is the improved risk assessment. Again, as I said, by working with the extensive amount of data, we definitely will have an improved risk assessment in there. There may be some aspects which are not visible to the human eye or to the existing model. It will definitely help. It will help us in predictive analytics, testing, better testing, having stress testing on our products or scenarios, risky scenarios in there. Real monitoring is obviously there. We talked about the money laundering already, privacy preserving analytics. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier was that when we are working with the data, a lot of times what happens is that we may have 200 years of data, may have 300 years of data, but that data may have built-in biases in there. And those biases will be playing much faster if we are using the generative technology, because it does not necessarily understand the sentiments, does not necessarily understand the built-in bias we have, and that could go and play a negative role for us. Potentially improper usage of the generative AI in the financial industry, fraudulent financial schemes. Now you could, if your data set is built on some fraudulent financial schemes, the output is not going to be too well expected. It will simply be perpetuating those fraudulent schemes. Discriminatory practices. If we know for the past 200 years or 300 years, the financial industry has been under some stress, the data collected is based on all these details or biased discriminatory practices in there, it will simply continue that practice in there. So something we can't expect it to produce a quality results there if the data itself is not, the training data itself is not good. Again, invasion of privacy. We see a lot of times that the data, single item of the data may not make an impact, but if you look at a wide variety of data, it does expose some privacy details of the people. So maintaining a privacy when you're going across the board indiscriminately capturing all the data and analyzing that one, people's privacy may be at risk. People can be, you can use the AI, generative AI as a weaponization or as a warfare. If you know some weakness in some society, weakness in some past practices, they can simply be perpetuated and could be very well used as a weapon. We went through this semantic errors. We sometimes feel that the AI model has some sort of hallucination, which we call it at times. It does not necessarily know the complete semantics. If there are semantic errors in there, it may not fully understand exactly how to interpret that one. It may confuse the factual data with hypothetical data. We see all the data being collected, the news media, the news sentiments come there. A lot of them have built-in bias. If you all you gotta do is look at 3 different newspapers and there, the same news item has 3 different aspects of it. If we are getting those sentiments in there, those biases will simply echo through it and will impact the factual data. That will have a problem also. Contextual errors, if we really need to do apples with the apples comparison, if we are looking into some scenarios which are completely under different context and trying to make judgments based on a completely different conditions, circumstances, that also may tarnish our AI results. It's important to note that while generative AI can enhance risk management, it does pose a challenge such as interpretability and bias in algorithm decision making. Additionally, the risk managers need to carefully consider the limitations and assumptions of generative AI model and validate their outputs with domain expertise. They should have the expertise and they be able to look at the generated output and test it whether it is good or not, and need to continue the iterations until they find that the results match their own expectations in there. A responsible and transparent implementation of generative AI is crucial for effective risk management. People will have algorithm tradings. If we keep using the algorithms which are biased, we know some of the algorithms have been built-in bias. There are some communities get better preferential treatments, and there are people who haven't been minorities, don't have much of a past history in there, that will have it. Biometric data and financial recognitions, those kind of data will cause problems. We are seeing a lot of deep fakes going into the data capture in there, and those deep fakes, the system may not be able to distinguish the deep fakes from the original data. That itself could corrupt the data in there. User profiling and target advertisement. Again, all these human sentiments, user profiles, community profiling in there, that will also show up through the training data sent there. Voice and speech synthesis, again, the deep fakes, false data, everything captured data in there. If that becomes a part of your input data, that also will have an impact. Ethical considerations, we need to be looking into that one there, because if we are working with the data which is corrupted data, which is built on the deep fake data, which is not necessarily, which has a built-in bias in there, we need to look at the ethical. We definitely may be mistreating part of the community. We may be making unethical decisions. How do you identify your AI generated model? There are several tools and techniques which can be used to identify AI generated output. Although it's important to note that the effectiveness of these methods can vary depending on the sophistication of the AI model. but some of these are metadata analysis. You need to have the data about the data. You need to be able to do the reverse image or do the text search and see whether that data actually is a valid data or not. You need to perform a statistical analysis of the data you're capturing, their outputs you're capturing in there, and see whether that fits into your expectation. Would you get the result like that one otherwise? Again, human expertise, we can never discount that. Whatever the decision comes of the ChatGPT or the generative AI, we need to make sure that human eye looks at it, does push the human factor, the sentiments, looks into it, and then decides whether this looks like a genuine output or not. When building a generative model, it becomes even more important to understand the inner workings of your model, the data set you're putting, whether it's a financial industry or cybersecurity model. You need to understand the working of your whole model, what the training data sets, how the data is being captured, what are the weights are there, how do you go and fine tune the data, and some of those weights may not hold valid for all your outputs in there. Again, it's also important to note that the ethical consideration, data privacy, potential biases associated with the generative AI should be carefully addressed in the financial industry. The responsible development and use of generative AI are essential to ensure that it aligns with regulatory requirements. It protects the user's privacy. It maintains transparency in its operations. That is my presentation. Thank you very much.